Sweet. All right, welcome everybody. My name's Jamie Boston and I'm with Zane Wedding. And this is I suppose we'll call it the second of our podcast. First one was analysing ascent. Today we're going to talk about throwline and the throwline event in particular. So the ins and outs, our ups and downs, all that sort of stuff that we're going to be talking about. So yeah, stay tuned.
Cheers, brother. So I'm Zane, everybody, and I probably had a lifetime of nightmares in the throwline events. Of all events, the throwline event is probably what's held me back from making the Masters multiple times. So yeah, just some reflections on how we go about kind of approaching that event and how some of the things that we've overcome and instituted into our game, implemented into our game over the years of kind of climbing and climbing comps.
I think we have a really good at both ends of the spectrum here. I've generally, over the last few years, after dialing all this stuff in that we're going to talk about, it's been one of my stronger, more consistent events. So, yeah, I think, we all have some horror stories. I think this event, and maybe not even just this event, but this technique in the Masters event, it's definitely ruined a few Masters events for me over the years. So let's hope that whatever we sort of knowledge we spill today is going to stop that for the next generation.
Hard out. So, brother, what's your approach when it comes to the throwline event? How do you start off? What do you do?
So something that's really big for me, and it's not just the throwline event, but it sort of comes through all of the events, is proper preparation prevents a piss poor performance. So this sort of starts before I'm even at the competition. So this is making sure that my throw lines are good. They're long, they're not broken in half, they don't have knots in them. I use 10-ounce bags. I have a whole lot of 10-ounce bags, maybe even a 12 or a 14 just for double bagging. I have all the clips that I need. I have good cubes. I have the full timer cubes, and then ropes that are long enough. And generally, if I can drive to an event, I think that's the difference. I got to fly. It's a bit of a different situation. But if I can drive to an event, I'd have 10 mil spliced Spectra Speed access lines, 2 of them. So it's a little bit lighter, a little bit thinner. They tend to go in a little bit easier. So it's all of that as far as gear goes. And then we start to look at my personal strengths and weaknesses with a throw line. And then that might change as I lead up to an event. Sometimes I'm throwing really good, sometimes I'm throwing really bad, and that might change how I plan for those things. So something that I'll always try to be honest with myself about is how am I throwing? So before I even get to the event, I can start to understand where I'm at. Do I have an injury? I might have an injury which I've had shoulder reconstructions, which sort of stops me from being full stretch at times. So all of those things before I've even signed up for the event, basically it's just getting all those things dialed in. And yeah, so we just roll through like that. Do you do anything different to that? You got anything that you would do a little bit different to that, or you just shoot for the stars?
But that used to be the thing. I used to have a philosophy which was just shoot nines or bust. One of the things that I do know is just that, the preparation of the throw lines is so imperative. And when you've been around the comp scene enough, you do notice how, especially at national level or international levels, how particular people will be with the handling of their throw bags. At kind of that national level, regional level, I don't mind lending out all of my gear. But at national level, it's just knowing your throw lines. I don't want people throwing my throw lines before I've thrown them. Usually I'll prep them to the stage where I've run them out before an event so that I know that the next time I throw them, they're going to fly. And all of that careful preparation. People think that you're overthinking it, but I've seen 100 throw balls fly out with the entire throw line follow behind it, and that's probably the more frustrating thing you'll ever see, is when someone throws a throw line and that's one throw line down.
It's one of the first things I teach somebody with the throw line is care for the throw line. Throw line cares for you. We've all seen, spent an hour, 2 hours trying to throw. You need to throw into this tree. You can't spike it or whatever at work. And, your throw lines are just all over the place. It's going for the fork and a big nest comes out. So that's something that I'm really, that translates from comps straight to work. Like my throw cubes don't fold up into like they stay flat.
100%.
They stay flat as much as possible. It gets brought back into the cube. It doesn't get brought onto the ground. It gets brought back into the cube every time. All those little things that are just like, they may seem like, seem annoying at the time, but they're going to save you a whole lot of time. And we'll get to that later when we start talking about what I'm doing while we're actually in the event competing. Like there's little details on things like that that are going to help you. So I suppose we sort of covered the things that will get us to the event and get us prepared for the event. And next, I say we're going to talk about the walkthrough. This is a really important time to go through the walkthrough of the event. It's really the only time you can walk inside the arena before you're actually competing. So this time is really important, and it's important for you to go map your plan or even start your plan, but also time for you to ask questions about things, about where you shoot from, how the judges are going to be, what's, the breaking broken DQ sizes and things like that.
No, 100%. I mean, that's the biggest part of the throwline event for me, especially now, is that kind of time you get to walk at the beginning of the day, where you're able to kind of really look at where you're going to throw from, but then walk to the opposite side and see how that angle truly looks. Yep. Marking out that place on the ground mentally for myself during that walkthrough, so I don't have to take a lot of time to set my throw lines up inside the arena. I tend to, during that walkthrough, decide, okay, yep, my bags are going to sit in that corner, and know where the placement of every single piece of gear is going to be prior to walking in there. I don't like to get lost in that circle, not knowing where my bags are. So I think about that careful placement of where they will be and where I will throw from optimally. Yep. I also try to think at that time, like, which way is the wind blowing from, and where will that mean that I set my throw cubes? Little things like that. And that's like the most important part of the throwline event, is just the planning portion.
Yeah, so for me, it's, I walk into that arena, we have a good look at the targets. Like generally before you've actually done the walkthrough, you've actually walked around the event, you probably have a bit of an idea where the 9s are, the 7s are, the 5s and the 3s, and get a pretty good idea of where you want to be. But this is a time for me to go and stand in the spot that I want to throw and visualize and sort of stand. For me, I stand with my feet together, pointing the target, and visualize where I want to throw. And it's really important for me to stand there and do that, look at that. And then it's sort of a like understanding, like, do I have room behind me for the swing? Is the barrier going to be in the way?
100%.
If I shoot long, is it going to go out of the barrier? There's all those, 100 different factors that I'm looking at. But basically, to sort of sum it up in a nutshell, I'm creating an A, B, and C plan. I'm going to, more often than not, I'll shoot 7 7s, 2 ropes. That's generally my plan. If a 9 allows itself to be pretty achievable, I'll go for it. But more often than not, in a high pressure competition situation, I'm going to keep myself within, I can hit these in 1 or 2 shots. That's my philosophy with this event. So that sort of really plays into an account with my plan. So my plan A will be, I'll have a fixed plan, and I'll only start to, the B's and C's cut away if I'm really not doing good, if I start getting things tangled, or I get a throw line stuck and I need to, cut away. But the ability to have a cutaway plan and understanding when to cut away is really important.
Yeah, and therein, like, sometimes, bro, that walkthrough, just asking those questions is so important. I tend to not rely on judges for time calls. I'm always going to have someone there who's going to be feeding me those calls, but just being able to ask your judge all of those questions, like, what are your sizes? what's the maximum, what are your points deduction sizes of branch breakages, like how they stand when it comes to breaking a dead branch or breaking live branches, all of those things, just to get kind of a rapport with the judge, but then B, an understanding. Very often I've seen throw line sections taped off too short, and just by standing there and doing that visualization, people have asked the question, hey, can these barriers be pushed out? And either they have been or they haven't been, but it's always good to kind of put those things forward. Sometimes they actually do move them, so it's good to kind of utilize that time to talk to your judge and get your clear plan of actually what you're allowed to do in that circle.
Yeah, for sure. Also, just keep a sharp ear for any fellow competitors also asking the same things. You will learn a lot. You know, you might have 20 or 30 arborist minds looking at the same thing. You're going to get a different thought or idea, or you could see something that you haven't seen. Like, you can't see everything. Like, we got heaps, between us, we got 20, 30 years of competition experience, and, we don't see everything. And, you and I have done this plenty of times together, where you'll see something or I'll see something and we'll talk about it. So it's always, you keep a sharp ear with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm the type of dude that'll be like, yeah, you can hit that 9. Go for that.
Yeah. This is the mind game event. You can blow people out pretty fast, telling them, different things and saying you're going to do different things, but knowing full well you're going to do completely opposite. So, this is why for me, it's like, I have a plan and I'm going to stick to my plan. That's like, I've nearly been caught out a few times with people, shooting 9s, and I'm like, I had a plan to shoot 7s and they shoot 9s, and they nearly, the competitive nature in me wants to go and beat that. And so I've had to really rein myself in at times, because chuck my ego out, because it's not going to get me anywhere. I don't need to beat them in that event. It's an overall picture.
Yeah. And that is so true. There are many pressures to the throwline event. There's the pressure of getting things in, but there's also the pressure of watching other people score during the day. And you don't have to win every event. Everyone kind of approaches each event like that, but it's your ability to pull like points back in other places, and that's where you should feel most comfortable as a climber. Like, okay, I can hit the 7 and the 5, they can hit the 9, I'm going to get them in the work climb, I'll get them in the aerial rescue. So Brian, you throw 10s, I throw 10s as well. I also do what you said, which is kind of, I aim with my toes. I aim like my toes and my hips will square myself up with the target that I'm swinging for. What else, bro? What else goes into that kind of like?
Yeah, so like, it's another thing that I sort of want to, when I teach people how to throw a throw line, like whether it's my staff or people at training days and things like that, it's eliminate variables. If you can repeat something, you're going to be better at it. So for me, like, I create myself a routine with my throw. Like, I'll have my cube right there in front of me. I'll generally have the bag that's still in there pointing straight at the direction that the wind's going to come from, which means it's less likely to tip over.
Yeah.
If I've got a single cube there, I'll pull the line out. I throw single string. I'll point my toes at the thing, and then I'll measure the length of the string between my fingers and the ball off my hip or off my top of my leg, or depending on every person. But that's something that's really important. If you can eliminate the variable in that length, for the average climber, like, I do change the length for certain shots and things like that. But as far as a general throwing scoring form, the pendulum will be the same. And that feeling of where the ball is in the pendulum for your release point will be the same. So that's something that I really focus on, is trying to get that feeling right. And then, you look down and you're looking up, and you look at your fork, down, up, and then I will stare just above the fork that I'm going to throw just before I throw my last one. So one thing that I see, and this is my personal opinion, I see people all the time, they look down, they look up, then look down, and then they throw. Your eyes can't focus on that. Eyes can't focus where it needs to go. So for me, I was down, up, make sure I got the line right. Then I'll stare, make a couple of swings, and then throw through to where I'm going for. And I found that for me to be like a really important part of like actually aiming at a target and shooting true.
No, I feel exactly the same way. I mean, my length is always hip to ankle. So top of my hip bone to my ankle. That's how I know that my length is. After a while, my lines basically work themselves into the groove where I have them over my finger. But that is, it's kind of like the most important thing. Like if I'm being lazy at work and I throw with a short string, I notice automatically, like just by the way that the string reacts and the ball reacts. I tend to, with my cubes, because I'll bring my arm straight past the center of my face. I don't throw to the side, like, and some people do. I find that I get quite a significant amount of drag that gets created by the throw line, like the tail of the throw line pulling on the ball itself as it flies. So if the wind is too strong in a certain direction, I'll push the throw cube into like over that side to stop it pulling off too far when the wind tracks. And that's just things that I like, especially if I've got to throw with any height. If I've got to really throw for height, I know that a lot of the time the throw line will pull my ball slightly offline, so I'll compensate for that with my placement of the cube. But generally that is the most important thing for me, is just like eliminating that variable, keeping a consistent length in the line. The last probably thing that I do, I hold my breath before I throw. So I exhale, hold, throw, like to kind of still my body. It's like a technique that shooters use. They'll blow out and kind of hold themselves still and then release. And that's something that I kind of try to do. I'll try to do no more than 6 swings because I don't like to be in my head too much. It's just like count that 6 out and then let it go. But yeah, if I'm off by a little bit, I may adjust where I stand. You know, if like, I'm just short, 2 steps back, fire away.
I think that's also pretty important to understand that before you even walked in. If we go back to that point that I was talking about, it's like, know your strengths and weaknesses. Some people shoot straight upright better. Some people need to be at a, flatter angle to get a better, to be more accurate. So that's something to understand when you're planning that too, like where to stand in the arena. Do you have the space behind you to get that shot? Like I probably won't shoot too many straight upright ones. Just on me, not a massive fan of it. One thing that I think is a little bit, people don't take this into account enough is different tree species and their habits. Like I found, so traveling to New Zealand to competing, being in Brisbane, Australia, where it's hot as balls and we don't have, European exotics here. Like we don't have oaks or elms or anything like that here. So when I go to New Zealand to compete, there's like epis all over the stems that I'm not used to. So it's brought me unstuck a few times where I've like had shots or tried to double bag, sweet, that's in a beautiful spot, or double bag, and then it just gets caught on the epis or it won't run, or like there's all those different things. Like I remember at the Worlds, it was into ginkgos and I've never even seen a ginkgo before. And a lot of people were having problems. I was lucky, I was sort of like last group to go through it, or second last group. So I sort of I watched where everybody was having troubles. And that's another point again, is like, you can't see what's at the top of a fork from the ground. It might look crispy and clean and everything just wants to fly through it. But as soon as there might just be this little nub there that just catches everyone out. So once you start seeing that, like if you see that, that's where I'm starting to change plans.
But I ask about that at the walkthrough sometimes. I'm like, what are those epis like up there, bro? Like, who pruned this tree? Just because I want to get that feel. And the thing is, oh man, I've come unstuck in so many situations that are like that, where my throw line's over, but it's out and it's caught over a tiny little epi, and I lose 2 minutes of my time trying to flick it in. When I hit that shot in 20 seconds with a throw, do you know what I mean? And that's kind of something that is like, man, sometimes I'll get that double bag and I'm like, yeah, and you'll clip it up. But then if you're stuck there swinging it's like, man, at a certain point, you have to understand the 30 seconds that you've lost playing around. You may have thrown 2 or 3 times and got a good isolation. Now, that's not all the time, but very often you've got to ask yourself, is it 50-50?
Yeah.
Like, is this a 50-50 double bag? Am I actually going to be able to roll that rope over from this distance? Because if you're not closer to 80-20, I don't risk it. And like, that's from just coming unstuck so many times where you're like,
look, I think Zane, talking now to the Zane that I first met, this is a very different conversation. It was like you said, it was nines or bust. And and more often than not, when I competed against you, it was like, oh yep, Zane scored 0 again. Zane scored 5.
So often. And like, bro, it was like a massive adaptation to my game to be like, no. You can hit those 5s. And like at work, I don't shoot ever for 5s, and I don't mind sinking something, you know what I mean? Like trying for something really high that's going to make but in a comp, life is different. And
you got 6 minutes. 6.
Yeah.
To set 2 lines, you got 3 minutes.
Go to the Masters off 2 threes and a time bonus, like, and really quick time. And it's that kind of careful understanding of like what needs to be achieved in this event. How many points out of a Masters have you been before? 6? Well, how about you just make sure that you get a 5 and a 7, not 2 9s, and that was something that was like really hard for me to adapt to.
Well, that's generally my play in general with competitions, is it's just here, like good in everything, not winning everything. It's like good in it, try and be good in everything, and more often than not, it works out.
Yeah, I mean, bro, like, and you know this better than anyone because you've been around ninjas, and like I've spent a lifetime around. I used to watch Jimmy, and like this motherfucker sink a 9, walk out, and you'd be like, oh, now I can do that too. And some people are just like really accurate with a throw line. I'm lucky. I'm a good talker, so aerial rescue kind of speaks to that portion of me. But I'm not heaps accurate, so and then you kind of like gotta lower those levels of expectations with yourself.
Again, be honest with your abilities in those situations. Like for new climbers, new competitors, you don't know yet. Like this is, like I said, 30 years of competing between us. Like we're coming to these assumptions, and it's probably taken us most of that to even get to that point. So it's like you don't know until you do it, obviously. But it's really important to work that out.
No, it's so important. And like last year I had a throw line snap in a 9. I'd hit it first, second throw, pulling my rope up, and my throw line snapped, pulling it into a 9. And a very similar situation to what you're talking about, like an oak tree, rough bark, severed the throw line. And in that moment, I almost I actually thought to myself, nah, that's my comp done. I still had heaps of time. I shot a few throws, but like my inability to let that go was just, and I ended up scoring a couple of 3s, and those got me into the Masters. But when you let those kind of events compound, that's the end for you. And it's so important to kind of keep that mental kind of stability in that circle.
Keep the highs and lows as flat as possible until the end. I agree. I won 2 national throw lines in a row because Barton Allen Hall's throw line snapped on 9s when he was pulling his rope in 2 in a row.
Barto's another one who just like hits throw lines. You know what I mean?
Phenomenal. And again, it's just like I suppose it was me just being solid, consistent. And then he, shooting for the moon and, obviously getting them straight away, but just snapping his throw line snap, which is probably comes back back to that preparation point again, making sure that that stuff's not going to happen. Trim your throw line ends and all that sort of stuff.
All of that stuff, bro. It's really important. And like not everyone has this, and I'm really blessed because like the crews that I have always run with have been ultra supportive of me when I'm climbing. But there are certain voices that I hear when I am in that circle. And I've had you do it, and I've had Dan Bars do it to me like multiple times where they're like, calm down. And it's just that voice that cuts. And it's so good to have someone there that's just like watching over you while you do your event, to just kind of like keep track of your mental well-being. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it is.
Because that's it. Like even, when we compete in masters and things like that, you've got everybody there yelling at you. I'll say to Terry, I'll say to you, it'll just be like, you give me time points, I'm going to listen to you and listen to you only. And that's, and it's just forget everything else it's saying. It's just noise. Because that's, probably brings me to the next part. So more or less, just as you're about to go into the event, is just like calming your nerves, getting yourself in a place, because this event probably takes the most like laser focus. It's, everyone's like, oh, it's just a throw line, blah, blah, blah. But it tends to take it's the most pressure event, like unsuspectedly pressureful event. So for me, before I go in, once I got my 3 throw lines, I got my 2 ropes standing there, I'll close my eyes and take 5 really big, slow, in through my nose, out through my mouth, in through my nose, out through my mouth, and really calm myself. And in that time, I'm just thinking of my plan. I'm going to stand there, I'm going to shoot that, I'm going to pull the rope in, I'm going to stand there, I'm going to shoot that, I'm going to pull the rope in, just try and stay calm. And then, like you said, don't get flustered. Try not to get flustered with that. If a knot comes out, just stop and think. You could, like, realistically, in 10 seconds, you can think of a way to fix it without getting all skittery and jittery. Like, you can work it out really fast.
No, but there's no better advice than that. Like when it comes to throw line, just calm yourself down a little bit. I've been in that circle running around, got my point, running around trying to get my bag, and the back end of the throw line has caught on my leg, and I'm running my throw. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, so it can go both ways. You can be super excited for doing well, you can be gutted. And I think for me, this is probably my biggest piece of advice, and the people who have done this, and I'm included in this, right? Throw lines can be a fuck up. Do not throw a tantrum. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is kind of the one thing about the throw line. I've seen people walk out of that circle, kick their hard hats across the field, swearing. Do you know what I mean? Burning throw line. It's like, remain calm throughout it all. I know that stuff sucks, but you're lucky judge don't disqualify you at high levels for like acting out in those ways.
I'm gonna touch on this at the end. I've got a little bit more to talk about with that stuff exactly. Sort of one of my last points I've got written down. So probably what I want to start to talk and think about is, that decision-making time when you've walked into the event, you've thrown a couple of shots, they haven't gone in, they've missed. You might have had given yourself, generally for me, I was like, I'm going to have 2 shots at the 9 if I'm going to try the 9. I'm going to have 2 shots at it, maybe a third if the first 2 were close. But if they were like both way out, then I'm going to cut away. So like understanding like that time to cut away. So understanding when there's like, okay, that's not working for me. You need to make those decisions yourself. All right, not going to get the 9. I'm going to shoot the 7, or I'm going to shoot the 5, and just put points on the board. Like we touched on this earlier, how many times you've missed masters and things like that by just not putting points on the board or not scoring where you need to.
No, it's so important. So important, And sometimes I'll cut away, not just like to the opposite side. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, have another go
not
at a
just
different.
yeah, just but like,
Yep.
okay, I'm just gonna leave this space. This place isn't working for me right now. It's got
Yep.
that bad juju on it. Run over there, sink
Yep.
one of the ones that you'd had lined up.
Get that
And that's the
juju
thing.
back up. And then,
Yeah.
and
That's
back on.
exactly right. Get
Yeah.
your like, your feels back to where you should be, and then shoot again.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. One thing that I also see quite often with competitors is like they throw once and then they're just pulling their line out onto the ground. Like,
Yeah.
I will put it into the bag 90% of the time. There will be times that I'm really, really under time crunch, and it'll just be like, quick, get it out. I'm going to throw it and hope for the best. Like, that's a Hail Mary time. Because quite often I shoot one line. If I, even if I've I've made the shot, I want to hook the rope on, I'm going to feed it back into the bag, because the amount of times that I've gone over to grab my other cube, throw my other cube, and it's just a bird's nest.
Yeah.
And then what have I got to double bag? And then, then I'll throw
yeah.
the other cube, and I've got one on the ground, one that's a bird's nest. I've got one line. So that happened to me at the World Championships. Just unluckily, I had one double bagged. One was a knot that was a waste. One double bag, so it ended up on the ground. So all I had was one line. So I got the 7, and then all I had was one cube, and I had time, but I was going to shoot the 7, the other 7, and I was like, I've only got one line. It's a bit of a double bag shot. I cut away and shot the 3.
Yeah.
If I had a shot, made the 7, I would have made the Masters. But I was happy with my decision to shoot away, because I still made top 10. It's just like,
I've done that same
again,
thing.
comes back down to like housekeeping, I think we'll call it. Like, it's probably a good term is housekeeping. And like looking at the ground that's underneath you too. Like, more often than not, it's pretty raked in pretty good conditions, but sometimes it's really not. So you have to put things back in cubes.
And it's another one of those things where you're like eliminating that variable by packing it back in a similar way. You're going to get a more consistent throw. And I know people, there's not that much drag, but if you're flaked out over the grass everywhere, there is a lot more drag on your throw line when it's releasing, coming through all of the friction of the grass. And if you're falling short by a few centimeters, that's probably why. So I just always try to tend to pack back in. Exact same thing. Sometimes you get in a rush and you've got to do what you've got to do, but it's just that same idea of eliminate variables, pack it back, be consistent, repeat.
Yeah. How many times have you seen somebody do that and stand on the line? Like every comp. Somebody does it at every comp.
Yeah, 100%. Like that, it's so much of a it's an event that every comp there's a something pear-shaped happens in it. You know what I mean? And more often than not, there's the odd throw that goes astray, but more often than not, it's like a risk that's being taken that probably wasn't the right risk to take, that ends up in something going wrong like that.
Pulling on branches.
I've done a manipulation from below where I've tried to fold my rope back over and then pulled it too hard, and it's ended way up in the canopy, and you're like, damn, now it's stuck. Someone's got to go get that, So it's just like, and I could have just shot that again. I wasn't even that far off it. So,
For sure. So do you want to talk about, I suppose, the scoring system? Let's touch on how it's scored, time points, and I suppose how that affects planning.
Sweet. So score sheets are up. Can you see that, brother?
Yeah, I can see that.
All good. So I've got the score sheet up. I've also got the breakdown of the times, but we'll look at this one first, and then we might flick over to it.
So a few years ago, there was a change in the scoring system for the throw line. So the 9s used to be 10. So it used to be 3, 5, 7, 10 with a total score. And then the climbing line installation was 5, 4, 3, 2 for the bonus points for setting line. So a few years ago, they made a change to incorporate time points into this. So what they've done is knocked a point down off the 10s and then dropped a point each off the scoring, so off the throw line scoring, so to be able to add some time points, which really changed the way that you looked at it. I think back in the day it was like, all right, 10-10, you need 10-10, where for me, like, it sort of lent itself to me really well. So for me, that's where my planning would come into for the sevens, shooting sevens, 2 sevens, 2 ropes. It's 20 points without time points.
That's it. And that's the thing. The whole throwline event is 30 points. If you score the 9s and you get your ropes in, you'll get 28 points. No,
26,
26
25, 26.
points.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the time points break down there, you get handed points as per the times that's left there. And that's the thing. Usually, unless a 9 is something you can definitely sink, at the moment, it's out of my targeting system.
Yeah. I think something that I've also found, again, I think it comes to that variables thing, is more often than not in a competition tree that they've set the throw line in, the 9s are something that you wouldn't anchor on at work. Like, there's so many times that they'd have this 9 that's really high up in the top of the canopy, but they're either at on a branch that's out here, or they're like really small up the top there. And that's sort of like, in my head, like, I wouldn't shoot that at work. Why would I shoot that now?
Oh, I hate it, because it's just like a presentation of a weird angle. You're not shooting at the center of the tree a lot of the time. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that sort of, like, understanding that too, like, it was a really important part. Like, generally, if I've shot a 9, it's something that I'd anchor on in the center of the tree.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. Like, I have seen Sebi shoot a 3-1, 3-1 in under 3 minutes, and I think he ended up with 12.
Yeah.
And so that is actually quite a respectable score when it comes to throw line. I mean, 12 is 12 points.
Yeah, but I've won plenty of throw lines with 18, 19, or 20, so it's not that far off. That, like, a winning score. Like, not often do you see a score, like a winning score of a throw line, over, say, 22. Like, it's not often. If the 10s are achievable, the 9s are achievable, sorry, then you may see some 25s, 26s, or even 30s. But more often than not, the winning score will be low 20s. And if you're shooting a 12 or 13 or 14, with just, shooting with time points and things like that, you're not far off.
Yeah, I mean, like, I couldn't believe, and this is the thing, once you've been climbing for a little while, you can almost score yourself as you go, like, a little bit. And so when you've got an experienced competitor like Sebi, who kind of understands the score sheets, he was late in the day at a nationals, made that decision, made that plan. 2 3s, under 3 minutes, 12 points, kid went to the Masters. You know what I mean? And like, that is something that I feel like I never could have done back in the day. Just like, I'm confident enough in every other event that I can just shoot low here and I'm still going to go through. And that was actually that decision that he made probably was the key decision that put him in, because so many other people shot high and got nothing that day, And so
so like, 2 5s, 2 ropes in under 3 minutes is 18 points. That's just shy of a winning score at so many competitions, and that's
definitely
5s are very, very achievable. Like, for me, generally, I won't shoot that low. I don't think I've ever intentionally shot that low. I've mismatched. I've shot 7s or 9s with a 5 or a 3. I've done things like that I know. So one side of the tree, the higher shots are just like, to me, are unobtainable unless I get really lucky. But the 3 or the 5 will be easy. The other side's quite easy. So don't get caught on has to be same points the whole way down. You can mismatch. One thing, actually, I think it was Richie Kenyon told me back in the day, was like, if it falls into a target, even if it's 3, take the point.
Take it, 100%. And that was the thing at the Nationals last year. I was I think I scored one of them, the 3s with a monkey fist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how low it was, because at a certain point, and this is like familiarity, I'm not used to throwing low.
Yeah.
So you look at those 3s and you're like, yeah, I think those every day. And then you throw it and you're bouncing off something higher, or you don't get the right kind of. And so,
I am horrible at shots under 15 meters. Like horrible.
100%. You know,
generally 3 shots, absolute max. At high shots, it might be 5 or 10 for under 15 meters. It's horrible.
Yeah, so I switched the screens. There's the time breakdown. If there's any competitors out there, one of the pieces of advice I give to anyone is just like, know your rule book. The rule books get updated, and this is, I think it's 5.3.6. It gives you that whole breakdown of how the time points are broken up and how they are given out. And
that's definitely
it's important that you know that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, that's definitely been one of my strengths over the years, is understanding the rule book and how you score your points, where you score your points. Like, do I need to do that to score the points? If I do that, will I score points? You know, not just this event, but some of the, the work climbs or the rescues and things like that. Am I overdoing it? Do I need to do those things to score the points? And then when it comes down to, like, we had some things at the World Championships when Terry was competing, where I was sort of floating around for Team Australia, and there was a whole heap of things that just weren't right. So then I would go talk to head judge Didge and be like, hey man, this is this, and the rule book says this, but this has happened. And he'd be like, yeah, you're right. And I basically saved the event in the ascent event because they were timing it wrong.
Yeah.
And they nearly had to redo everyone, but they were able to save it. So if I didn't bring that up, then they would have wrecked the whole event. So really, really important to understand all that stuff.
So important. I know that the current New Zealand champ made the Masters on a rule book. He put in his, whatever you call it, when you don't like a judge's decision, went to the rule book. The rule book upheld his decision. So it's super. And now he's the New Zealand champ. Super important that you know that rule book and kind of understand the breakdown of these score sheets, because so often judges don't.
Yeah.
And
we're not going to bash on the judges, but because we need those guys. Actually, we'll probably get to that in a minute anyway. But quite often the judges, especially at like a local level competition, they don't have the bulk experience. They're sort of like, we just need people there to do it. Now that 100%. I'm on the other side, like running competitions, I see that really clearly. We just need people. We just need people to stand on a stopwatch and do those things. So, you knowing the rules, hand on heart, knowing the rules and what you're doing is right, you can have that discussion after and say, hey, but rule this says this, and more often than not, you'll be overturned.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not so much about like criticizing the judges. It's just knowing your score sheets and your rule books, knowing it well enough that if you hit a 7 and a 5 and you've got your mate there who's checking it, and you know that you got your 7 and your 5 and you had 3 minutes 50 on the clock, well, you're due a couple of points and they should show up in your score sheet. You know what I mean? So just keeping an eye on those things for yourself, because it's like you say, these comps are being run on the smell of an oily rag, usually by volunteers who are just coming in and learning, and sometimes you're judging before you're even competing. So it's important that if you're at that kind of high level, that you kind of just keep tabs on your own stuff by knowing your rules, knowing where the scores break down.
I'd actually really suggest anybody that's a competitor and wants to be a serious competitor, judge something. You will learn more from judging an event for the day than you will in a long time.
No question. Yep.
Sweet. So once we've shot our 2 9s and 2 ropes or score 0, we want to walk out of there the same. So something that's really important to me is, like you said, all these judges are generally volunteers. They're doing this in their own time on their weekends. Might be a 2-day week. They're taking a day off work if it's on a Friday to do this. Go and shake all the judges' hands, look them in the eye and thank them. You know, like not just this event, but if you look at some of the other events that are scored and there's discretionaries and things like that, like if you're fucking chucking your toys out of the cot, because more often than not, they haven't scored all the points on their score sheet by the time that you've touched the ground.
Yeah.
If you don't, you know, go and thank them. You know, do those things. Like it might score you more points.
Not just that, bro. Like, you know, I done the best aerial rescue I've ever done last year. Went straight up to the judge afterwards, ask him if he had any advice for me. Where can I clean that kind of stuff up?
Yep.
What do you think? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do that all the time as well.
Always, bro, always, because, you know, like this is the main kind of point for comps for me. They are competitive, yep, but they're an educational kind of facility for us. So, you know, like some of the judges that you do have might not be that experienced, but some of the judges you get are on. Some of the judges you get, especially when you're down our neck of the woods, Australia and New Zealand, are the best in the world.
Yeah,
so it's really important.
Previous national Asia Pacific world champions as the judges.
Yeah. Or, you know, like not, they could be competitors, or they've been like actual head judges at the internationals doing that stuff for ages, and understand it. So that it's there that you extract some of the key information for how to bring your game forward. For years, judges used to tell me things, and it wasn't until I started to like adapt them into my game that I actually started to realize, that stuff actually works. You know, it feels like the climb is a little bit more fluid, and then you check your times, and yeah, they are coming along. So it is really key. Check with your judges. Thank
for sure. Also, probably a touching point overall for the competitions, and it's something that a reason why you and I both love this is the camaraderie, the atmosphere with your fellow competitors. Like I've competed in a whole lot of different things over my life, but nothing is like tree climbing competitions. Like you have your direct competitor at the highest levels cheering you on, helping you out. Can I borrow some gear? Yeah, no worries. Like, you know, when we roll around in our little groups to all the events, like take your time, go to meet everybody. And then especially for this event, pack each other's ropes up. If you can, help everyone, like it keeps the day moving. It's just those little things that, you know, I'm sure, you know, go a long way in building your person, you know, your reputation, your enjoyment for these things as we go through.
And I'll tell you this. I remember Terry's first comp, helped him out, you know, gave him advice. All that shit comes back round to you. Because now if I'm doing a work climb or anything and he's there, he gives me everything that he knows. And that's one of the best work climbers on earth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it all comes back around. You don't know that the person that you're teaching isn't going to be the next world champ, and he's going to actually help elevate your game. And that's what you've done for me. Terry's done for me. I've hopefully done for you. You know, that's the best thing about climbing comps is it's just this whānau of people. And this is what this is about, who are trying to just kind of like lift up the game a little
something
bit.
A saying that you've always said to me, there's two, iron sharpens iron. So when we're all together, working together for a better cause, and then rising tide floats all boats. You know, there's some things that like sing true to us. Like there's been times that like, because, you know, you were very established in the climbing scene when I started, I would always look to you for advice. And then recently at your national championships, you were FaceTiming me on the walkthrough for advice, you 100%. Know, and that help you win an event. 100%. You know, that's those things that like, these are relationships. Like you're from New Zealand, I'm from Australia. I have friends around the world from this, you know, like this is our life, you know?
Yeah. And bro, the 100%, and bro, your lens is not my lens, and it's not Terry's lens, and like, but it's not. And so there's all these people that just look at trees so differently, and then all they might say is like, "Oh, I'm thinking about cutting that line," and it's just like, "Oh, yeah, that's lovely." You know what I mean? And so it's like, and that's what these are all about for us. It's just like perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like, if people can see my lens a little bit, maybe that helps, and your perspective. So yeah, that's dopeness. You got anything else to add, my bro?
Right, nothing more to add. I suppose we just want to touch on, like, this is something that we want to continue to do. This is something that we want to build on. If anybody has questions, shoot us some messages. Maybe on the next podcast, we will answer some questions. It could be anything tree related, could be anything not tree related, but I don't know if I'd be able to answer it very well. But yeah, this is something that we plan on building, talking about all sorts of different stuff. So obviously the competitions and the events and the breakdowns and all that stuff, but then work accidents, work scenarios, cranes, helicopters,
Yeah,
any of this sort of stuff. So
yeah, to be able to tell the story of kind of like New Zealand and Australian arboriculture would be super cool, to kind of get a collective of people who are willing to speak to all of the different stories that exist. We have those contacts, so it'd be super cool to keep this going, kind of get a voice for Australian, New Zealand tree work, you know?
yeah,
Perfect. You're the
unreal,
man, brother. It's so
Cheers, brother.
awesome to talk.
All right,
And
man.
we'll catch up. See?
Peace.
Peace.